Hey, welcome back to True-Moto-Resto, and on today's episode we're going to fire up the NS400R. It's been about 11 months since I ran the bike, so I figured it's about time to give her a run. So we'll give you a walk around and then we'll fire it up, all being well. Okay, so this is my 1986 Honda NS400R, and a lot of the bike guys out there will definitely know what this is, and if you don't, I'll give you a quick rundown. So this was a Grand Prix replica from back in the mid-80s. I think they produced them for 2 or 3 years at the most, and in Canada they were only brought into Canada in 1986. And they only brought, well, the numbers, depending on who you talk to, somewhere in and around 300 units. Maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, but not very many. So we only got them in 86. Other countries did get them in 85, and I'm not sure whether they were at one other year other than that. Somebody out there probably know better than me. They came in, this is what they call the HRC livery, and then they also came in the Rothman's livery. So I had an extra set of Bodywork, so I painted it all up. There's another video out there on that. So I have the Rothman's Bodywork for the bike, and I also have a second set of HRC livery for the bike, because parts for these bikes are getting pretty much unobtainable now. You cannot get you can get a few things here and there, but there's a lot of stuff you just can't get, and if you do find it, it costs silly money. I was fortunate enough to get some good advice from an old friend a few years back when I first got this bike. I think I've had this since 2012, and that person recommended to me that if anything I could find out of Japan, there was a Japanese bike breaker called the Miyabi. I'm not sure if they're still going or not. I check their site once in a while and I don't see too much stuff out there now, but they used to break one of these weekly almost back, going back say 10 years ago, 8 years ago. And so I would buy whatever I thought I might need for years down the road, and all of these boxes here are just full of NS400R parts. Especially electronics, stators, CDI boxes, actuators for the power valves and all that kind of stuff. I bought anything and everything I could get my hands on. I have 2 sets of Bodywork, things like the oil injection tank. I have a set of cylinder heads. I have some spare pistons, I think. I have a crankcase, a transmission, everything that I could get, because these things, if they break down now, you're not going to get anything to fix it unless you've got it kind of squirreled away like I do. So yeah, I rode this bike quite regularly for a few years, and it's been now I think 2 years since I really rode it on the road with any sort of degree of regularity. And last year I didn't ride it at all on the road. When I did ride it the last time, and one of the CDI boxes actually died on it. So the way the CDI boxes work on these, and I'm going to get this probably wrong, but I believe one CDI box controls the lower right-hand cylinder, and the other CDI box controls the rear upper cylinder and the left lower front cylinder. So this is a V3. So it's basically 2 cylinders forward, 1 cylinder up, which is the opposite of what Freddie Spencer's Grand Prix replica, Freddie Spencer's Grand Prix bike had. So this is what this is, a replica of the Freddie Spencer NSR 500 or NS500R. And his bike was a 2 up, 1 forward, and this is a 2 forward, 1 up. Of course, his was a 500. This is a 400, and this bike kind of lived at the time where, certainly in Canada, it was competing against the RG 500 Gamma and the RZ 500 from Suzuki and Yamaha respectively. So I think in Japan you could buy the Gamma in the 400 as well, but they never made the Honda in a 500. I think primarily, from what I understand, because in Japan There's a big jump in insurance rates when you go from a 400 to a 500cc bike. So we got the 400, and while not as fast as the RG 500 or the RZ 500, these were claimed to be a much better handling bike. I have had an RZ 500, and it was certainly quicker, but less comfortable, I would say. I found the bike to be very, very heavy, and because the pipes ran under the seat, it was also very, very hot on your backside. But this bike is very, very nimble, and it goes like a rocket. So there are power valves only on the front 2 cylinders, the ones that face this way at the bottom, and they kick in at about 7,000 RPM, and it's like throwing a switch. The bike is a complete dog, say it's a 2-stroke triple. So it's a bit of a dog under 7,000, but once you hit 7,000 and those power valves close, it's like throwing an on switch and being strapped to a missile. It just screams and goes like absolute hell. It's a lot of fun to ride. It's a lot of work to ride because I don't know, you don't really want to be, screaming it all the time. So it does tend to load up if you're kind of under 5,000 RPM. So you're up and down the gearbox, keeping it on the pipe, as they say. 3 cylinders, 3 carbs, 3 pipes. So you can see the pipes here, one on each side at the bottom. Those are for the 2 front lower cylinders, and then the 1 pipe that comes out of the back here, which goes to the top cylinder. Oil injected, although I will say, because I don't ride this bike regularly anymore, I do put a splash of injection oil in the fuel that's in the tank, just because I have what I believe to be healthy paranoia in case that pump decides to go south on me while it's in storage. I don't want to seize the bike when I fire it up. Yeah, all the bodywork is original bodywork. There's no replica bodywork on this. The front fairing has been painted. So the red, when I got the bike, it was in, I'll say, okay shape. Mechanically excellent. It was rebuilt, but the front fairing had a few stone chips on it, so I had this repainted. I had the front fender repainted, as well as the fork covers. I do actually have a brand new OEM front fender and brand new OEM shock covers as well, fork covers, but those are the things that tend to get chipped and marked with bugs and stones anyway, so why put them on right now? I didn't. As far as what else is original or not original on the bike, the windshield, not original. I don't have the original. It's a smoked replacement windshield. And the front turn signals. So for Canadian bikes, these should be kind of the ones on a stalk, like the rear ones here. Should be that sort of style. These are genuine Honda turn signals for this bike, but they are Japanese spec, and the ones that came on it, they did have the original ones on it when I got it, but they were in really poor shape. So these came with the bike as well. They were in a box, a couple of Honda boxes for replacements of these. So I just put those on because they look better, they're better shape. So it's kickstart only. No electric start on it. This bike even still has the break-in caution decal on the gauges. 32,568 kilometers. It was rebuilt at I think about 31,000 kilometers. The gentleman that owned this before me was the owner of a machine shop, a mechanic shop. And so it was rebuilt. The cylinders were sent to Nicotech, and I think they were either in Ottawa or Quebec, and they recoated, replated those Nicosil cylinders, and so yeah, it's had everything done. The transmission was checked through, so there were no issues with the gears. The second gear is a big problem on these bikes. The shift forks wear. And the dogs that engage the gears tend to wear, so it's not uncommon to have these bikes pop out of second gear. So what have I done since I've had it? I'll say, aside from doing a bit of paint work on the upper fairing just to kind of spruce that up a little bit, Last year I did replace the seals on the water pipes at the front, because they do have a tendency when it gets cold to kind of shrink a little bit, and then they seep a bit of coolant. I did a power valve service on it at the same time. You know, I basically went through, when I first got the bike, I completely tore it down, went through it, cleaned it all up, and that kind of stuff. So it's in nice shape. She's a little dusty in there because it's been sitting around for a while. So today I'm going to fire it up for the first time, I believe, in 11 months. So it usually takes a few kicks to get this thing going when it hasn't been run for quite a while. And that's likely because I usually drain the carbs or run it way down before I put it away. And then the petcock has got a little vacuum operated pump, I guess you'd call it, on the petcock. So it's only going to feed fuel once you start kicking it. So typically what happens that you'll see, I'm hoping you see, is that it'll fire on one cylinder, and then the second cylinder will kick in, and then the third cylinder will kick in, and then it'll start its harmony of triple pipes popping and squeaking and making all the great two-stroke noises that we all love. So yeah, we'll see if she'll fire up. Not just hanging out. That's just the battery charger. I always keep these things on a tender when they're sitting around. So yeah, we'll get it fired up in a few seconds here, and listen to the music. I think the only blemishes on it cosmetically, so this is obviously an original tank and hasn't been painted, but there are a couple of cracks here in the clear coat. So that's, you can see them there. And that usually is because, well, this is a decal on the bike, and as typically happens with older machines, when they start to weather and you get the heat cycles, the vinyl kind of shrinks and contracts, and sometimes you get this kind of cracking and checking of the clear coat. So that's the only kind of blemish really on the bike that I can think of. I think there's a little bit of a scuff right here on the pipe. That was there when I got the bike, so probably somebody laid it down at some point, I guess. But all in all, she's in really nice shape. And this is the second one that I've owned. And when I sold the first one, I instantly regretted it. So I don't plan to part with this one. So we'll back it up to the doors here. I'll open the back doors. I'm going to set up a fan in front of it. One, just to keep the smoke from going in the wrong direction. We'll keep the smoke moving out of the shop, and also feed a bit of cooler air to the radiator. So let's get that part going. light is on. I'm not sure why. It has lots of oil in it, but something I got to take a look into. Probably just a bad connection in the oil level sensor. It's running pretty good for for sitting for 11 months. I can't really complain about that. I'll definitely have to look into that oil light. That'll bug me. I know that it's always been fairly temperamental. It used to be that once I left the ignition on for a couple of seconds, that would go out. But yeah, my guess is it's just the connection for the switch in the oil tank. Just run the fuel out of those carbs since I'm not going to be riding it again this year. We'll just, no point leaving the carburetors full of fuel, so we'll run them down a little bit. turn on choke for a minute, get the last of the fuel out of those carbs. There she goes. Right on. So yeah, the only thing I guess I got to take a look at some point is that oil tank. There's a oil level sensor in the tank, so likely that just needs to be looked at or cleaned up or something. There's probably something wrong with that, but that's okay. We'll get that sorted out. Oh, there we go. It's working again. See, that used to be what happened. You turn it on, the oil light would come on, and then it will go off. So yeah, I guess it's fixed itself. That's what it normally is. Now, if I fired it back up again, that would stay off. So yeah, there's a quick rundown. She's a beautiful, beautiful bike. One of the nicest bikes I think Honda ever made. It's a gorgeous looking bike. I think it's as far as looks go, it's a toss-up between this and the VF1000R as to which is the prettier bike. I sold both of my VF1000Rs, so I'm gonna have to give my vote to this, I guess. Just the color scheme is fantastic. Beautiful. Very, very desirable bike now. There's not very many of these, certainly not many in Canada. And two-strokes in general, the values have just gone absolutely bonkers in the last 10 years or so. It's a bit obscene actually what these things will bring. I think the RG 500 Gamma from Suzuki is probably the most valuable. And I think the RZ 500 is probably the second most valuable, and trailing, although certainly my favorite is the NS400R, and I think the only reason it lags behind in value is that that missing 100 cc's, you know, the 400 versus the 500, I think is what makes the difference, although these have started to come on really strong in the past, I'll say 10 years or so. Compared to the other two, these have really started to push it. But, yeah, there you go. There's a quick walk around, and it's too bad there's no smell-o-vision. Just to smell the two-stroke. YouTube need to come up with something there, I guess. It smells fantastic. Say, I run Klotz R50 Technoplate in it, and the only thing that smells better is when you run that Klotz with 110 race fuel. Or C12 race fuel. That smell, the combination is just unbeatable. But yeah, it's a beautiful bike. Well, thanks again for watching, and thank you to all the subscribers. I just recently passed 500 subscribers, so that's kind of cool. I didn't have any real expectations when I got into doing these videos and opening the channel and whatnot, but very much appreciate the subscriptions, so please keep them coming. And we'll talk to you real soon. I think my next task this week is we'll get the ZX7 fired back up again and see how that goes. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned.